All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started tonight. Talk a little bit about the next project up, which is the stem cell research project. We're getting down to the wire here. We only have really two more topics to talk about, one tonight and one next week, and then we'll be reviewing the following week to get you ready for the end of semester push. But I wanted to just go over this stem cell project a little bit because there have been some questions about it. Um, I'll talk a little bit about cell differentiation, then I'll talk about the project and how they relate. But from an objective standpoint, really, your lesson and the project really wants you to get three things out of this: being able to describe cell differentiation, explain why that happens, and then identify the differences that occur in those types of differentiated cells. So, with that, let's take a few minutes. Let's talk a little bit about cell differentiation. And before we do that, we really have to go back and we have to talk about information that we talked about earlier on in the year. We focused a little bit on the cell cycle and regulation, and you remember that life itself is defined by the cycles of cells. Okay, and as just as plants and the green leaves of plants absorb energy from the sun, they begin to change color in the fall, and now here we are in the middle of winter. The trees are bare, decomposition is occurring. This is providing nutrients to really everything on ground level. And then, as we move into the spring and the summer, we have regrowth again. Everything is cyclical. So, really, you know, the two points that, the lessons leading up to this we're trying to get across was that everything from a biological standpoint has to do with, some type of cycle. So when we're talking about the cell cycle, please make sure that you've looked it over, you understand the components of the cell cycle, you know, um, the gap phase, the synthesis phase, the gap 2 phase, the mitotic phase, and cytokinesis as they relate to the cell cycle. Um, and also, please make sure that you're understanding how, when things in the cell cycle go wrong, how it relates to cancer. And as we go through the second part of the year, we'll take some time and we'll talk a little bit more about those topics, and I'll hopefully do some more instructional videos on them. But really, what the meat and potatoes of this project was centered around with cell differentiation. And if you think back to the lesson, and remember that we all started out as a single cell that was produced from a male gamete and a female gamete. Okay, and how did that one cell produce? If you think about it, how did that one cell produce such a prolific organism? Okay, when we look at all the different types of cells that we have, our blood cells, our nerve cells, our skin cells, okay, our tissues, our bones, okay? We have different organs. We have liver, heart, kidneys, okay? And then those organs make up organ systems. And when you think about that, um, no one cell does all the things necessary to sustain our lives. So there's differentiation that occurs, okay? And it's kind of a really like a division of labor, um, like you would see in a factory, okay? So the best way to describe life is really a division of labor. But when you look at that process of differentiation, we don't really understand it well. But what we do know is that it involves the turning on or off of genetic information in our cells, okay? And the process begins with the very first division that occurs um, in utero. So the organelles of the cell are constantly working and moving and reproducing, and these components allow for cells to perform their specialized functions as the organ and the organism grows. Okay, so as that process of differentiation occurs, we have specialization that's occurring um, in our cells. Okay, and in the lesson, you were to have watched a video on specialization and differentiation, and it talked a little bit about how stem cells are those unspecialized cells that can differentiate into almost any type of cell. And they believe that scientists believe that the stem cells can differentiate into neurons. They can differentiate into, if directed properly, into the organs that we talk about of organisms. However, the crux of that video was that while this is fantastic, it's also very controversial. Okay, and with the research comes, you know, ethics that need to be thought about. So really, what this project seeks to do, and we're going to flip over to it here, is to have you understand that cell differentiation is a process which cells take on specific functions, shapes, and forms, and we believe that these functions, shapes, and forms that a cell takes is established by our genetic code, by our makeup. Okay, um, and what we do know, and what you know from the video, is that stem cells can differentiate into almost any type of cell. It doesn't matter what it is, but they differentiate into any type of cell. So the goal of this is for you to do a little bit more research. See what else you can find out about stem cell research by choosing a category regarding stem cell research and responding to the category's chosen questions. Okay, so here's what some categories and questions are, and you're only gonna, for this project, okay, you're going to choose you're going to choose one category and the questions that go with it. Okay, so you're not choosing all categories, you're choosing one category. Okay, you can choose to research the history of it, you can choose to talk about their description, or you can choose to talk about, probably, in my opinion, the most difficult part of it is the ethical component, because this is really more about you than anything else. Okay, so if you choose the history, talk about when did stem cells become known, who discovered them, what experiments or studies have been conducted so far by them. Okay, please make sure when you're doing your research, and I'm going to attach links that go along with this in the Moodle page. Use those resources, but please cite those resources appropriately. Two, if you talk about the description, what are they? What do they come from? Why are they important? And then, of course, the last component is, what are the ethical concerns regarding stem cell research? Describe each side of the debate. Okay, what are the pros for stem cell research? What are the cons for stem cell research? And then tell me what your opinion about stem cell research is. I don't want to know about anybody else's. I don't want to know what the news says. I want to know your opinion about them, and argue it based upon your review of the pros and the cons and what your point of view is. Okay, and again, please make sure that you cite your sources. Okay. Um, if you have any other questions with the project, please come in and see me. I'll be more than happy to help you out. You can attach it as a Word document, or you can answer it directly in there. I'm comfortable with either one. And we'll be back here again next week going over our final project of the semester and wrapping up and getting ready to move into the second semester. So have a good week, everyone, and I'll look forward to hearing from you if we have any problems or questions.